My name is Mark Barnrooper, and I've had clock repair as a hobby for many years. And this clock here, I bought it at an auction. It's a very pretty clock. It's a Gilbert Cala. I believe it's about from 1900. This one is very intact. It has an extra spring-wound feature here. I heard some people call this an alarm clock, but the fact is I think its better function would be as a timer, say in a kitchen. And then on the movement here, there's a dial in the center which you rotate, and it has a snail on the back side here. Let me see if I can lift this
Not
up.
an actual snail.
Of course it's not an actual snail. But right here is a snail, so that when this arm gets to that point, it drops and releases pressure on the gong arm and allows it to play itself out. And the way you set it is you wind it and you'd set this, but normally you just let the spring back here unwind and just don't use it when it's not in use. Most of these don't work because parts are missing. They're supposed to be, mine's missing a metal rod that goes between here and that little hole right there, and it passes down the front of the clock and then attaches there once it's in the works. Once it's in the case, I mean. So, but that's not the issue I'm talking about today. What I'm going to talk to you about is proper setting up of the gong mechanism on a Gilbert. The last one I did was a Ingram, and it was dead simple to do because it required no, all I had to do is put it together and it worked. If I did that with this one, think it looked so much the same. It has the same sort of wheel here that determines the number of gongs, and I thought, oh, I'll just put it together. Well, it doesn't work that way. This clock has to be timed properly. There are two things that have to happen simultaneously, and the positions of gears depend upon the positions of gears for that to happen correctly. So back to the beginning, when I first got this clock, the reason it was not working is because I think it had gotten face planted once, and when it landed on the floor, it hit the front of the clock, and these bars here, I've got my finger on this one here, and I'm going to turn it over and show you the back side. Here's the other bar. This is made out of brass. It's fairly soft. When it hit the ground, it must have taken this, it took this bar and bent it. So it was bowed, severely bowed. And the front one was also pushed in. So the whole gear train mechanism, everything was just out of line. It was like the clock was shaped like a C. All the gears were bent like this. So what I did was I disassembled it like I usually do, and I don't have a letdown tool. So the way to do it is you have to remove the tension from the springs before you take it apart. And on each one of these there's a finger spring, and you can look somewhere else and get some information on how to do this. There's a thing called a letdown tool. It makes it safer. I've done it enough and I'm aware of what can happen. So, and they were already partially unwound, so it wasn't quite so bad. And these clocks don't have the worst springs on them. Some of them are very bad. Very dangerous to do. So I would not advise doing this without the proper tools. So I use this, release the spring on the clicker, and then release the pressure using this. I don't recommend doing that, but I've done it enough, so I did it without losing any fingers. I put it together, all the gears except for the springs, because the clock guy that I send this to straighten the frame doesn't need these in here. But I did want him to have everything else so he could get everything lined up correctly. And So I sent it away, and it was gone for about 2 months, and he's a busy guy, and was no emergency. So I got it back. He only charged me $50 to straighten the frame. I got it back. All the gears were back in it. These, of course, were still out of it. So I took some more pictures, disassembled it one more time, and then I began reassembling it and got it all put together. And I thought, well, this is probably just a lot like my old Ingram that I did, and it'll just plain work. Well, to my surprise, I wound up the gong mechanism, and it started gonging and gonging and gonging, and it would not stop. So I knew that something was not put together right, or something was dependent upon the position of one part against another. And I ultimately figured out what it was. Let's go back to the top again. This finger here is attached to a rod and then pivots on right there. Come over here, Jody, and you can see the rod move when I move this. See it moving? That's the one that that's the one that's dependent, that makes this stop. But when that happens, two things have to happen at the same time. This finger has to fall in one of those slots, and each one of these has more teeth, one more tooth than the one before it, so that the clock can chime the correct number of hours. But then another thing has to happen. You can look right here and you'll see that pin rotating around on that gear. There's the pin. At the same time, this rod goes down. And it's not going to do it because, let me just get it through the time here. Let this thing get back over to here. Gong, gong, gong. Here's the last gong. And now as it comes up, this comes down, and see now the pin there, the hand's in the way. That pin has to line up with the finger on the end of that bar, which is also attached to that. See the pin moving up and down. And then the little finger is bent on the end. This has to be low enough so it sees that pin and hits it and then stops this gear from moving. So watch as it comes around. This drops down. Falls. And now this pin, which is right here, has to be in the right position so that it comes over and hits against that little bent finger and stops it. Well, the problem was that this was in, that little pin was way down here on the gear. It was almost 180 degrees off of time. And in order for that pin to line up, this was out of position. It wasn't down inside the slot. It was up here in one of the other positions, up in here somewhere. So the problem was how to time it. I was afraid to take it all the way apart and have the springs and gears go flying and possibly damage them. So the way I did it, and I know it was luck or skill, I loosened these, removed that one, loosen that one, and completely remove that one, and then I had to pry the frame parts apart, and I removed that flywheel. I removed this. I didn't remove it, couldn't remove it completely, but I was able to disengage the pin and move it out of its bushing and tilt it outward. And then the critical one, this one that I got my finger on, I was able to tilt that one out and disengage disengage this from the gear that operates it, and rotate this independently of that gear until I could get the pin in the correct position. And once I got it so that pin was, there's the pin, was up here, while this was also at the same time down in the bottom of one of these slots, then I knew it was timed correctly. Then I put it back together again, and lo and behold, it worked the way it was supposed to. So If you ever put one of these together and discover that it's just chiming and chiming and chiming and not stopping, the chance what has happened is you don't have this gear in time correctly. So let's get it around here and I'll show you one more time. This falls down. The pin on this gear comes around and comes to a rest. Comes to a rest against the end of the finger that's attached to that same rod. So, this is going to be a really nice clock when it's done. The casing, it's got good glass, good paint on the glass. Very, very little wear. The only thing I'm not happy with is the finish. Original finish was, it was given a faux finish. But I think they did a nice job of putting a faux finish on it. So I'm not going to try to change it. Some people like to have original finishes. If you did that, you might want to strip the paint on it and go down to the bare wood and start all over. But I think this is going to be a really pretty clock. Thank you, and I hope this helps you with your Gilberts. Take care. That's it.
Stay safe. Bye.